a student here.
Not just offering options, we are offering destinations.
Of Business Administration,
evolution of the LLB degree,
and knowledge, hands-on learning.
Then from there, really the world is my oyster.
Springfield University is a game changer.
Bathi ngibophisa abantu balomango lokusho ukuthi mina njengoba ngisiqashe kwangakafanele mina ngiyoreport abucala.
Sinivusele nebenkosi lenhle sinemukele hlelo lapho sikhona people and places. Hlelo nebenkosi lenhle libuka indzaba kulonke livela kangwana. Indzaba etehlukahlukene ikakhulu njenge nebenkosi lenhle phasa sona sive phasa wena lapho ekhaya. Kepha ke lamhlaba kangwane ngidaba ngiyibeka ngesilungu lapha ngoba sabe sikhuluma ngendzaba yesimo lesikhona edibhedlela simo semaphilisi. Kunengikhuluma lokube khona bangwane kwathiwa emaphilisi lamanye akalethwa lamanye akhona adliwe lamanye njani konje lokusala ukuthi eMaswati ahluphekile. Namhla kumsakazo Channel Yemaswati usukumile uthi asekawufuna kahle hle ngibani lo wabanga ukuthi emaphilisi abe ngekho. Ngenhlanhla lembike wangwane noma ngenhlanhla lenhle namhla sidabe siyibeka ngaso singisi ngiphethe tilwane lapha nebenkosi lenhle ema journalists labakhuluma singisi nebenkosi lenhle kwagabu ke wona umhlabathi sinabo khona la. Well, good afternoon, or rather good evening, viewers, and welcome to People and Places. Tonight we are looking at the health crisis, or rather the drug crisis in the Kingdom of Eswatini. Joining me right now are journalists from within the Kingdom of Eswatini. On my right is Mr. Bheki Makhubu, and also on the left-hand side, on my left is Mr. Mfanuko Nkambule and Sibusiso Dlamini on the other side. Well, Bheki Makhubu comes from the Nation magazine. I'm going to read his credentials. I mean, everybody knows Bheki Makhubu, but obviously I'm sure you'd want to hear from me who Bheki Makhubu is. He's the editor of the Nation magazine with 38 years of experience in the profession. He has a degree and is currently pursuing a Master's of Law. He has written extensively about politics in the country and is a well-known public figure in that regard. That is Bheki Makhubu. You can greet them, Bheki.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Member. Perhaps today we can have a good discussion and find out, because the public has a right to know where perhaps their problems might be. That, as you said, the bottom line is they don't have drugs. Perhaps in that brainstorming session we might even come up with suggestions on what needs to be done.
Thank you very much. That is your man, Bheki Makhubu. And Mfanuko Nkambule right here next to me comes from the Times of Eswatini. And Mfanuko Nkambule is a deputy editor in the Times of Eswatini, weekend publications with a 30-year experience in journalism, qualification in media management from Vet University.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mamba, for having me in this wonderful program, and good evening, viewers.
Yes, that is Mfanuko Nkambule for you. And also here we are having Mr. Sibusiso Dlamini. He's a journalist for 9 years with the Eswatini Observer, investigative journalist, and also passionate in finding the stories behind the breaking news.
Good evening to the viewers, and thank you for having me, Mr. Mamba. I think it's an honor to have this conversation today in such a serious such a serious issue in the country.
Yes, I believe they are just trying to tell me something about sound. I hope we are clearly heard back at home, but however, let's go on with the program. So I'm going to hear it now from Mr. Makhubu. But before that, let me just introduce some of the other panelists who are not with us here. In Johannesburg right now, we're having Babe Dlamini from Funduzi. And obviously, you know Funduzi. And he's given us his resume. It's quite long, but just before he speaks, I'm going to be telling you about it. And then also we have Mr. Sean Morgan, who comes from a Swazi farm, and also from Ava Farm, who are joined by Mr. Dave Melvin. We will have them at some point. And also we do expect to hear from the Ministry of Health within the Kingdom of Eswatini. We tried to call both of them, that is the Minister and the PS, but it was kind of very difficult to find them. But we were able to speak with the former Principal Secretary in the Ministry of Health, that is Mr. Zwane. And he said basically that it was kind of very important for him to also hear what we will be talking about, but he declined politely to comment here, because he said he is the accused person. Therefore, he believes that somebody or someday somebody will speak the truth. But anyway, as we go on, I believe that there are some people who are going to be coming in who are also touched by what we'll be talking about. But first, now for 10 minutes, I would hear from Bheki Makhubu just to hear your perspective.
You can see that there are too many inconsistencies said. We've written about it to say that it doesn't make sense. So that hasn't helped, because even if the report itself was an authentic, genuine, well professionally done report, why are we still not solving the problem? Why has it not brought, I think it's been, how long has it been since it came out?
2 years now.
2 years now, and still we're in the same place as if it never existed. In fact, from when you look at it from the perspective of a patient in hospital who needs medication, and a forensic audit and so-called forensic auditors who have made money out of this, this is a drain to taxpayers. You know, they were given 8 million malangeni as payment, but we still get prescriptions from doctors to go and buy our own medicine while paying people who have done nothing for us insofar as our illnesses are concerned. So you've got to ask, why is this so? Perhaps as we go along, Mr. Mamba, we'll discuss what is emerging as we see. Recently, for instance, I wrote an article, and I think that's why I find myself here. There was an application by the Anti-Corruption Commission to have some 13 people arrested for what is claimed to be this crisis, among them the principal secretary, who says turned you down, and rightly he's an accused. You've got the businessman, Mr. Karim Ashraf. You've got the chief pharmacist of the country but the courts refused to issue the warrants of arrest. What's going to be interesting is why the courts refused. You will see when you read the judgment, and I've read the judgment several times, you see that the Anti-Corruption Commission was actually being dishonest in seeking. They were playing to the public to make it look like they are doing something. The judgment itself shows that they lied to the court in seeking the warrant of arrest. So there's a PR stunt that is going on and a bid to distract the public from the truth. Why are we not getting drugs? It has nothing to do with a tender that occurred in 2019, which was the subject of this court case.
Sorry, baby, may I just chip in a little bit here? Yeah. I believe that I've been told by the transmission controller that there's a short advert that has to run right now from Johannesburg. You'll continue immediately after it. Well, that was Bheki Makhubu. We're live on Channel Yemaswati. The title of the program is People and Places, and right now a message from the Commercial Department.
Sale is now on, and you don't want to miss out on these incredible savings. Pay only $5,999 for the Sahara Kitchen Scheme and save $2,000. Save $1,000 with a Kelvinated 252-litre fridge for only $9,999. With no deposit option, 24 months to pay, and same-day delivery. Hurry to the Lewis sale while stocks last. Prices valid until 22 February 2026.
Welcome back, viewers. Yes, We were still listening to Mr. Begi Makubu just before the advert. He was telling us more about his perspective and the stories that he has covered with regards to the drug crisis in the kingdom of Eswatini. Begi.
I think what's important, Mr. Mamba, is this. This government that the king appointed to office in 2020, where are we now, 2023, is of very well-educated people. We have a prime minister who holds a master's degree. Problem-solving skills come with them. And yet we don't have drugs. And so it only follows that this is deliberate. And it's more so when you look at it from perspectives such as maybe where I stand. I started out in the media when there was a different generation of leaders. They were less educated than this, but they never held this country to ransom the way these better educated Yemaswati are doing. And you can't say it's because they are dull or anything. They're doing it deliberately. They don't want us to have drugs because there's a certain interest. Now, when we go back to that court case, for instance, I mean, it's mind-boggling for a lawyer to walk into a court to claim, for instance, as they did, that the Swazi farm and the business people, Sean and Mr. Ashraf and Dave Millen and the principal secretary and the chief pharmacist and everybody had conspired not to supply government with drugs worth 600 million because that's what they allege. But during the course of the application, and remember this application is made ex parte without the accused being there, the lawyer making the application finally accepts that actually they did deliver the drugs that we are asking you to arrest them for not delivering. There was only 2 million emalangeni worth of drugs that were not delivered. And the judge asked, so have you told them to deliver? Have you nibahambele? They have not. But he says, but the contract that government signed with these people says has got mechanism for, collecting on, and if what they call in law special performance, go and get your money. They didn't, but they want the warrant. So you can see that what is happening here is they just want to parade them in public. Look, there are many problems. Recently, what concerned me, for instance, was that the minister himself appointed a so-called advisory committee to advise him on the drugs crisis. Here's the problem, Mr. Mam. The chief pharmacist of this country, we don't have a chief pharmacist. A chief pharmacist is the expert who tells us which drug matters between Panado and Grandpa and whatever, and can tell the difference between them. That's what they are trying to do. So what are they advising him on when the experts that were hired by government are not there to tell him that this drug is the one that we need for such and such an illness? They are sitting at home. In fact, government is trying to have them arrested based on lies. So you can see that Ingulenza. But as you said earlier, the bottom line is we don't have drugs. Some of us are getting old and we are starting to use medication on a daily basis, something we never thought we would do, but here we are. At a time when we can't access medication. We don't have the luxury of going to Joburg or any other country to get medication. We spelele lakai. So that's what is upsetting about this whole thing. And the fact that we are, as I've come to believe, we are being deflected by local business people and professionals being sought to be arrested based on pure lie, unmitigated lies. Somebody else is gaining out of this. For me, because I've taken a huge interest, I will argue to you that if you go across the border to South Africa, because we've had, and you go, say, to the Madlanga Commission, I dare anyone to go and listen to this police officer called Dumsan Kumal, Lieutenant General. Listen to him explain how cartels work. Once you listen to him describe it, he did it only last week in Parliament in South Africa. And he made an example of a problem in Eswatini. We are sitting with an embarrassment where a South African gangster called Ket Matlala was found with Swart's ID. Why was he here? This man took down a hospital for 1.2 billion. Could it be that he has something to do with what's going on in our health system? Why should we not ask that? Because what we know is those that are being accused of this crime are being sought to be arrested based on lies. If we satisfy ourselves that there's a lie about these business people, these professionals, where a government is willing to run a health system without professionals such as a chief pharmacist, who's gaining? And we have people who hold Swazi IDs, who are known as kingpins or in the drug healthcare movement. It can't be. But I say, go and listen to Tumsan Kumar, and he'll tell you how these cartels work, and you can bring it home to the Ministry of Health.
Yes, for the viewers who've just tuned in, this is Begi Bakubu telling us more about his perspective of the drug crisis in the Kingdom of Eswatini. Well, we shall have another commercial break. When we come back, we shall have the man himself here, Mr. Mfanuko Nkambule from the Times of Eswatini. We'll be back.
The Lewis sale is now on, and you don't want to miss out on these incredible savings. Pay only $5,999 for the Sahara Kitchen Scheme and save $2,000. Save $1,000 with a Kelvinated 252-litre fridge for only $9,999. With no deposit option, 24 months to pay, and same-day delivery. Hurry to the Lewis sale while stocks last. Prices valid until 22 February 2026.
Welcome back, viewers. Yes, we are still on Channel Yemaswati. The title of the show is People and Places. And now we've just had a feedback from the public. They are saying that we need to also speak in Siswati because they are very much interested in what we are talking about. However, the reason why we did this one in English is because some of the people we will need to interview are speaking in English, so they need to understand. So what we'll do is we'll try to speak in English and then translate whatever we'll be saying into Siswati. Sesikhuluma Siswati nebenkosi lenhle kuze sinonke ndova sesivile sikhalo senu lapho ekhaya. Kwesikhathi ke ndawo yalapha kuMfanuko Nkambule will be telling us more about his perspective of the whole story.
Thank you, Mr. Mamba. Thank you, viewers. My perspective is simple, and for starters, I would like to state in categorical terms that I'm alive to the fact that there is a shortage of drugs in the country. Must I say shortage of drugs or shortage of certain drugs? But I normally argue that in my understanding there is a shortage of certain drugs because shortage of drugs is a blanket statement, and when you analyze this situation, you say you are likely to understand it in Siswati, and you are likely to understand it in English. In English, they say there is a shortage of drugs. And in Siswati, at the Keklipaya, at Lutsitsini, they will say, good drugs. There are no drugs in the country. So I would say, yes, of course, there is a problem that needs to be solved with regard to the drug supply. Yeah, my interest and viewers arose when I was studying not the Funduzi report, but the general report from the Auditor General that is released on an annual basis. It's a thick document. It's comprehensive. The points are well articulated. and issues were queried there. I will advise Yemaswati to also go through the report of the Auditor General. So when I read the report, I realized that, but I must say that I read that report in conjunction or in consultation with the other one, the Funduzi report. The editor, I'm thinking about an editor, the AG's report mentioned about 101 suppliers, drug suppliers, who received or who got tenders from government to procure drugs valued at 1.2 billion. So I said to myself, if there are 101 suppliers, why are we focusing on only one? That's when I started to dig a little bit deeper to find out why this was so. Yeah, because 101, I'm talking about 101, some were getting about 2 million, 1.5 million, 3 million and stuff like that. But the focus was only on one. I said to myself, no, there must be a problem there that needs to be exposed. So that's when I started doing stories on the drug situation in the country. Secondly, when I read the AG's report, I discovered that Nature, for instance, also procured drugs on behalf of the Ministry of Health. And the Auditor General queried the supply or the acquisition or invoices, if I were to say, amounting to about 646 million, if I'm not mistaken. And the one supplier in Belgium, or I wouldn't say Belgium, but maybe in one of these countries, it's Belgium, between Belgium and Denmark, was paid about 132 million in advance, and that company didn't supply. But nobody talked about this company, so I was worried that, hey, what are we doing here? Are we being fair? Are we being just in what we are doing? Why are we discriminating? You see, not necessarily taking a side, because we are impartial as journalists. You see, we are not taking side, but at the same time, we can take a position when we realize that something there is not doing right or something there is messing up issues. So I said, no, I'm going to do the story. I'm going to interview people. So I understand that some people may say, you are in bed with so and so, you guys are doing this and that, when you know that there is a serious shortage of drugs and people are dying in the country. I understand. But as a journalist, my job is not to join the bandwagon, but is to report on facts. So mine is to interview even the people who are being accused. Mine is to interview even the people who are accusing, the accusers and the accused. Both must be interviewed for the story to be balanced. So that's what we did. We went to Swazi Farm, we interviewed the PS, we interviewed Funduzi, even though procedural, once a report from a forensic, or whether it's an external forensic investigation, once a report has been tabled in Parliament, it becomes the property of the government and not the hired forensics. But we gave Mr. Dlamini an opportunity to respond. I know sometimes we will complain, but we had that in mind, that we are not following procedure when we interview him, because he was doing the job on behalf of the government, because the PS must respond to the allegations that are being leveled against the forensic investigators. Yeah, that's what we discovered, and we received some documents, because you know that there were allegations that drugs were not delivered at CMS, So when we went to the people who were being accused of not supplying to the CMX and to find out why they did so, and they also produced their documents stating that no, we did supply, but the drugs were delivered at Mbabane Government Hospital and other public health institutions. So mulo, just because basitshele ukuthi sibhekene Siswati bengithi Maswati lamahle thine as a journalist, especially from the times of Eswatini, we are not supporting anybody asiwathathe masayid, but it's in when we do investigation asiyendele ukuthi sifuna kubamba abantu. Lokwasenda kwekuthi njengami nje lokwasenda kwekuthi mhlawumbe bangithuma ukuthi asoyibuke nawe lendzaba ngilesikhathi ukhanza kwekuthi ku focus on one company, when in fact kumai nase ngibuka ngifunza lama report atike kona vele ayamvilaphisa umuntu ukuthi awapho ngakhanza ukuthi kuna 101 companies lathola emathenda government, and nayo ihlanganisa le mali yala mathenda onke langa aleti company 101 ukhanza ukuthi it's 1.2 billion. Then ngase sengiyadibuta ke mina kwekuthi lo amunye unale mali lengaka mhlawumbe say about loyo 30 million, but lo 102 billion nasithi sine shortage of drugs kepha kwaphuma emathenda a 1.2 billion ngeke sikhulume nge shortage of drugs because kune problem fanele ukuthi nawenda le investigation ube fair ibe wide khona lo coverisha sonke le scope, hayi lokuthi ungazothi utarget abantu labathithe nje sibe fair nangabe kugangiwe sibopha wonke umuntu lo ngabe ugangile kule issue yema drugs. Ngaphinze ngahlola nalapha ka nature bantu bebanganaki kule report ya AG le AG because icala lapho nawufuna ku understand ifunduze report kufanele uqale ufunze i-AG's report lowayi babe mathebule lawayi lowayi release after ema auditors akhe asayibukile nabo lenzaba yema drugs, and yona i-detailed kwendlula le funduze report, it's more detailed leya AG mathebula enawo yona ke ikhuluma ngabo nature ukuthi kwente kanjani banengi labantu, and nawubala nje imali ya nature yena yedwa nje iyagijima iyale bo 646 million la question akhona AG, and one company lese Europe yabhadalwa in advance 132 million yaphinze yanga supply, but ngase ngiyadibuta ke ukuthi hey phela ngoba sifuna kusolve le issue yema drugs, why sibese siya discriminate, why are you discriminating, why are you focusing on one company when there are 101 companies that receive tenders from the government of Eswatini to procure drugs. Yasuka lapho ke lenzaba kuze kube kunyalo ntuleni, but we believe that isaqhubeka sitawuqhubeka silethe lawo ma details nokuthi mhlawumbe itawuphenyeka kahle fairly. Yes, ngasho kanjalo kwanyalo.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mfanko Nkambule. That was very clear, straightforward, and very understandable. And I believe you at home also are understanding exactly what happened now. The bigger question that is bringing here is 101 companies given 1.2 billion emalangeni, yet there's only just one company that is being fingered to have been a part of the mess that has been created within the health department. And I realized while you were still talking that I didn't do my research very well as well, because I only brought one company here. Because I didn't know that they had it. But anyway, my justification is that 101 is too big for the studio. I was not going to have all of them here. And because let's say utsi lona bang 101 bantu abatsinzeka lapha ngithi cha mina kusosi nami khona lokhu wrong lenkwendile ngoba bengakayathi kahle 101 mina ngilethe inyingapane la yinye namajani wabona konje lapha ngiyole ngithi ngifuna siwabute mbamba athi ayisho nsaphle imali nyalo sekuvela 101 kepha kunenzaba nebenkosi. With us now is Mrs. Busiso Dlamini from the Eswatini Observer.
I think for me, I'll pick up on 2 points. Mr. Makubu, Nailana Umsu, for Mr. Makubu, who raise ruling yasenkantolo ya CJ, but there's something very specific lekumele siyibuke in that case ukuthi lokuganga lekukhulunywa ngako is 2 million, but we're talking about a drug crisis. So if you're going to tell the public that this is an investigation, say anti-corruption, say funakbopha bamfu laba cause a drug shortage crisis, let's say for argument's sake there is even a case. 2 million worth of drugs is why we are where we are. And if I'm not mistaken, lama drugs laba khuluma ngawo lapho ma-ARVs. So kute maphilisi langaka la tibhedlela because of my ARVs are 2 million. It doesn't make sense. Something doesn't make sense with that case. And when you read the ruling, as Mr. Makubu say, the CJ makes a lot of sense to say, there's other means to resolve this. Contractually, there's to go about with the contract before and number two, you want to do this clandestinely. But it's people that you enter in a contract with. So nkansi sive lapho akufuni siyengeke kuthiwe Chief Justice walele ukuthi kuboshwe bamvu laba cause i-drug shortage. Lana bebakhuluma ngema-drugs are 2 million that were never even azange sive ukuthi side ma-ARV. So that's the part lekufuna ukuthi mhlambe sive understand ukuthi si-dismisselano singilama journalist abuka lama documents. Why are we so dismissive of this case? It's the fact that it's taken out of context. And never mind lama contents ayo lange khathi, but now ibuka yona 2 million worth of drugs has caused an entire drug shortage like leave. Cha ngeke kwendeke njengalo msufu sekasitshelile ukuthi ma billion le khulunywa ngawo. So yini sibuke 2 million in a billion. And then enters the funduzi fray la itsinzile nayo Mr. Makubu ukuthi awu it's a disappointing of a report, and the one thing lebese sekuba nale ukuthi mhlambe kutele political will kwaqala nayingena le current administration kwaqale kwaba ne committee of ministers leya set up kwathiwa ayibukeke. In fact, before the previous administration kwabe kune committee of ministers lebe set up ukuthi buke le drug shortage. Kwangena lenye phinze nangena the new administration kwaba na lenye committee of ministers, and nanyalo I think kulama committee lamasha there's another health advisory committee, and in that very same committee kunemmeli wefunduzi. Well, that's a different argument. Lesingakubuka ukuthi ifunduzi kanti ayikendini ema reports lekufuna ngabe asitshela. Some of them are being argued, but funa ngabe asitshela the state of the health sector. Now Funduzi is in the middle of this entire thing of us explaining ukuthi yini dinginga the health sector nyalo. Ummeli wabo ke loqashwe professionally ukuthi aba defend kuleli committee lolo. How is that lawyer going to objectively look at that thing? Mr. Makubu, you have low qualifications, so ngangichazela ukuthi ethical utawenda njani, but that's nabakhuluma ngafunduze aphume emengephandle abamele bacethe bese uyangena, or how is that going to go about? Because so many things have not gone right ethically when we talk about funduzi. Aside from guti i-finding yinye nje nasingathi ngiyayiphika yinye le 9 million remdesivir sive guti hulumende wakwabhadala 9 million for my drugs that at the time were donated. In fact, the claim is the suspended principal procurement officer uhlele ekhaya nje ngoma wakholuda na Ava Farm ukuthi bacharge uhulumende for my drugs la worth 9 million lebo donate mu WHO. Now nasa sisebenta le story aphumele bale WHO wathi cha bakangwane ngicela ningicolele mina kude ema drugs yonke lemvelo nikhuluma ngayo nje angiyathi ngathi ukuthi ngikhuluma ngani angibati bo remdesivir bo 9 million ngicela ningibeke eceleni. The fact that we even went to Funduzi esbekashito umsufu sathi sesicela nichaze ke nyalo ukuthi benithini. In fact, they have it in black and white in the report. The principal procurement officer colluded with a supplier to charge government for donated drugs. In fact, it's a charge lepinze ithatha naye chief pharmacist naye charge kuthiwa naye bekala khathi kule mvoleni nasekaphuma ke WHO wathi cha bakangwane asiyadi le mvoleni nikhuluma ngayo thina. How are we supposed to take this? Is a forensic audit that the public has paid for. the public has paid more than le mali lebekumele babhadalwe yona ekuqaleni, kepha le report has seemed to only make the situation worse. It's ostracized certain suppliers, which then pushes this narrative into lebeka kusho Mr. Makubo ukuthi hayi man, yini ngathi lesive sitshelwa imvo lekufuna ukuthi sinake yona lapha while the real business happens behind the scenes. Yini ngathi sinikwa imvo lana lekufuna ukuthi sidlalwe ngayo la ngembili, kepha labamvu laba khona le ngemuva bachubeke badla imali, kepha eMaswati abe ede maphilisi. Ngile introduction yami lengaba khona Mvuleni ukuthi so many things don't make sense now ubuka lama chain of events, and now ubuka political will. In fact kuke kwaphona kuphume Mvunankulu himself wathi watshela iParliament wathi this report it's not helpful at all. Now if the Prime Minister is going to say this report is not helpful at all, then it begs the question, sendiwani lesive?
Is that it?
Is that it?
Thank you very much. That is Mr. Sibusiso Dlamini from Eswatini Observer. Well, it looks like Dlamini, I believe, is with us right now from Johannesburg. Mr. Dlamini from Funduzi Forensic in the Republic of South Africa, actually in the Kingdom of Eswatini. Maybe just before he speaks, let me tell you more about him. He's a Swazi-born South African, a seasoned legal, forensic, labor relations and advisory professional with over 12 years extensive experience across South Africa and Eswatini. He's also the founder and director of W Health Consultants in South Africa, multidisciplinary firm specializing in legal advisory, labor relations, investigations, compliance, and strategic advisory services. He also serves as executive director of Funduzi Forensic Services, PTO Ltd, based in the Kingdom of Eswatini. It's quite a long resume here, but he also holds a diploma in business management, a diploma in computer science, a diploma in advanced labor law, and is a registered serving member of the Labor Relations and Employment of South Africa, LERASA, and currently enrolled for advocate studies and cybersecurity, reinforcing his professional standing and commitment to ethical labor practices and legal representation. There's just so much that I can say about Mr. Dlamini, but he's here. He's going to tell us more about himself. Dlamini, there's so much that has been said about you, and we do realize how professional you are. And however, unfortunately, looking at my panel here, most of the things that they are saying about your report are not so good at all. Maybe you can find a way of justifying some of the issues that have been said here, Mr. Dlamini. Welcome to Channel Yemaswati.
Ndrulini, isicale ngekuvusela sive songana emakhaya. Awulishayi ukuthi ngimixe silungu neSwati. Sivusele dinza kuselo hleli nato lapho emajournalist nawo balumakhulu ngikhambule na eDlamini nawe Ndrulini nalaba kusebenzela ngemuva. Ngidlulele kuye na Sean na Dave sikuvusele nonke emakhaya. Ndrulini, it's mouthful. In a share so that we can try and save time for any other guest in your program, as well as Nemasat Naya Akona could digest that example. And within one, the common ground, the common code is that there is an issue in Swaziland that emerging as far as 2002, 2005 to date around the issue of drug supplies through CMS, right? And with that being said, I will pick 3 points that I think maybe are directed to me. Before I pick the points, it's very important for me to say the following. I'm not gonna go into details as what the report is contained, because some of the matters I think everybody is aware of, they are before courts. So we cannot be in a position to have a matter whereby now we are having a court in a nationality of some sort, where we are preempting the other cases that are being registered within our courts. And number one, starting about Makubu, $8 million. That's not true. It's not 8 million. It's around 4 million plus. It's not 8 million. So I don't know how did the 8 million arrive to. Because there's some of the issues that we normally encounter on a daily basis. Journalists are saying, but they are not truthful and so verified. And it's something that I've come across several times and in such a way that I even said, no, there's no need for me even to speak to journalists because you can tell them these are the facts, but they will continue to publish what they want. Nonetheless, moving away from that, he also went on to say government enter into contractual obligations with these suppliers. I will cluster it with the matter of Ubamkambule Magati. The Auditor General's report is having 101 suppliers. Why? And then Yemaswati being directed to one. In my report, I'm having 16 suppliers. And I must state clearly, it is, and I think it's known to everybody sitting with you there. We mentioned all 16 suppliers. We never mention a name of a director of each and one of those suppliers. What happened? The very same journalist invited or are the one that pinpointed to the same company. Of work or a method to use in terms of dealing with suppliers. I didn't dive to say this supplier is directed by you. And to say the least, I didn't know who was owning Swazi Farm. I didn't know who was owning all the other 16 suppliers. But what happens? I was there in Pretoria. I started receiving calls from the same journalist telling me that and I was surprised. Who is that person? What is happening? Fast forward, then there were articles falling all over the media, which I was not involved in part and parcel. I never at any point in time pinpoint one company. But what happened when that articles or those calls were made, I was made by the very same journalist to respond to that specific or special entity director or company. At the very same journalist that did that to start with. And the other 16 companies, of which I'm fully aware they have seen the report, none of them at any point in time called me and said, Lamini or Funduzi, we have seen that you publish our company about 1, 2, 3. What's happening? What are we involved? Going for this, we cannot sit back whatsoever. And we were then forced to respond. And at times, journalists can tell you, I was even said, guys, we cannot respond because of 1, 2, 3. So journalists have got a role to play to this Garali or to the media Garali that they are owning in terms of how does we arrive to say one company is being fingered. In our report, it's not one company that is fingered. Coming to the contractual obligation to say there's a contract between governments and the suppliers in terms of shortage and collections and so on. I think in our report you can recall, it is something that we've been tabled in Parliament to say, yes, there are contractual obligations, but there are policies in place. Above policies in place, there is the Drugs and Medicine Related Act of 2016, which is one tool that we ask even in Parliament, why did CMS or the Minister of Health activate that tool? Because that tool or that act is a country document. That act speaks precisely, spot on, as to say, how do we deal with a supplier who has been founded in drug shortages, mislabeling, all those, you can name them. It comes with what must happen, who must be suspended, why must it be suspended, who must be charged, how must be charged, what are the fines, what are the prosecution channels, who must be part. It's all in that document with other documents. And to even say that document also guide the mix of health in terms of instilling the recent board that has been installed in terms of the regulatory authority. That's what we ask, to say, Swaziland is part to say, who do we suspend and how do we suspend? No. That Medicine, Drug and Related Act speaks for itself what must happen.
That's number two. So to say there is a judgment in court that says government go back and deal with the contractual issue. To me, it's the same thing. I think Van Konakambula once asked me, if not, but I think it's a question that came from Times to say to me, what do I think about saying certain suppliers must be blacklisted? That is contained in the Medicine Drug and Regulated Act. And it doesn't say we have to go to ESPRA. It doesn't say we have to go to certain. So there is a in how the matter is done automatically blacklist or automatically put that supplier into suspension. So if we have policies, acts, laws, regulation, and we're not implementing it, we'll arrive at this point where we end up pointing fingers to each other and so on and so that. I know when we come to the picture, people say this is a small company, this is an unknown company. How will they get such a message? I did ensure everybody to say, guys, coming to what they can forensic, what matters most is the expert per assignment or the expert in the consultations that's going to be in a position assigned to do this work, of which is what we provide. And I never at any point in time said journalists, no, Fundus was and it's old and so forth. No. What I even tabled in my initial presentation was that I am bringing a team of high qualified professional experts. And I think I was the only one with around 8 years, 10 years experience in that team. Everybody was talking about 15, 20, 25. Seasoned people, qualified people on that work. So the report is pure of precision and ethics. Whoever thinks that they are looking, let me pick a big on the issue. To say he picked one issue around the issue of that was said to be donated and 9 million was paid. I think we are all there. We need to resolve this issue and move forward. To start with, journalists, Ngambule said, are people acting with impartiality and are people that always scrutinize whenever they come across a matter before them. Let me take you around it. In our report, we did put the two pictures of the Demzeva. One stakes at CMS, the other stakes in Babani Hospital. And we did make the donated drugs at Babani Hospital from COVID site. And journalists, trust me, they've seen it. Right? But how did the journalists tend to play the narrative in this game? There is no way in my report, if it needs maybe a Maswati, or I will say to you, Mfulini, if you haven't seen the report, you can open no point like that in our report. Journalists must stop lying and preach lies or preach narrative. And again, in our report, there are over 21 issues. Journalists, mostly Siswati, or I'll be specific to say Siswati and Mfankon, and then put other particles or meeting or matambo, but that's what is leading. What journalists did, or what Siswati did, they wrote a wrong letter, misleading letter. Only HO answered correct and said, no, it's not true. I never donated any drug to Eswatini or anything to do with the Zanzibar Eswatini. That's correct. But a proper journalist, this is how should have said. There is these drugs that have come to this report. This drug has got a letter that involves you, SWHO, and this drug is purported to be said to be donated. Now, Do you know anything about this letter? Have you ever, at any point in time from your office or your offices or your authority, know this letter that says during this time, this drugs was under trial, was really under trial? That's what property should have said. With that being said, let me park it on the side. Let's come to the response from WHO, the one that was even published, because both Luciso and Cause keep on calling me 24/7. Yeah, you lied. Although I'm saying I didn't donate these drugs, but there was a statement issued by the organization advising all health institutions and countries and saving mother bodies against administering of that drug at that time. In my report, the attachment or the involvement of WHO was to say WHO said these drugs, when it was proposed, was still under trial. The question is an honest question. Who's a system as well? Let drug it, let it try it. They are saying this one now. That's question number one. Two, nangabe WHO athi leli drug is on trial and warn against any other bodies in the health spectrum to administer it. I don't want to go into detail.
We'll be coming back to you. I believe that my colleagues here do have some questions for you. Nebengosilenhle ngubabe Dlamini lapha loqhamuka lapha ekafunduzo echaza naye indzabanga kakhe ngendlela ehlukehlukene. Bafana bakithi bamvile lapha ngendlela ehlukehlukene. Ngivile nje la kukhulume ngako lapha emlangeni ukuthi iramdesivir bekuyi-trial drug nekuthi ungathi bekuna two sets of the remdesivir lindzaba la ikhulumako la ngiko ngithi ngidawuhlanganisa nabona laba bekuneni labamshiya lowa but usichazele kabanti ngoba iramdesivir iyaqhamuka khona kaSwazi Farm, so sinabo bakaSwazi Farm la siphinde sibe nabo lapha baka-Ava Farm. Just to answer what Mr. Dlamini has just said. Well, Mr. Dlamini has answered a number of questions. Actually, he has some of the queries directed to some of our colleagues around here, especially on the other side, Mr. Mfanikona Kambule here and Mr. Sibusiso Dlamini. You seem to have been dealing with Mr. Dlamini many times, so you guys know each other. So I think you have beef. There's some beef between the three of you. But anyway, this is not what we're about here. But basically, I want to introduce now Sean Morgan from Swazi Farm, and then also Mr. I believe also we did ask that His Excellency Mr. Karim Ashraf be here as well. I believe maybe he will join us at some point because I do have some few questions for him. But there's Dave on the other side. I remember at one point we were with Dave and him, that is Morgan, in Parliament. I was quite interested. I covered the story myself, and this was about an inscription that was written on the drugs about not being sold somewhere. And then also there was this other issue that is being mentioned by Mr. Dlamini here about the drugs being on trial. However, they had promised that they were going to call them again in Parliament, but it was cancelled immediately. And we've been trying all this time to find out why when they not allowed to go back there. But in the meantime, we shall go to a commercial break. But when we come back, I'm going to be asking questions now on Dave Melvin and Dave Melvin and Sean Morgan, and I believe that His Excellency will also join us at some point. And my colleagues here will also be posing questions also to Mr. Dlamini about some of the accusations and attacks on some of our brothers around here. In the meantime, a message from the commercial department.
Eswatini Medical Christian University informs all qualifying candidates that the application process for the academic year 2020
Time right now is 5 minutes past 9, and here we are still on People and Places. My name is Kawe Mamba, and here we are right now about to conduct an interview with Avo Farm and Swazi Farm. Well, unfortunately, I've just realized that there were about 101 other companies, but however, I have them here. And there's been so many allegations that have been made against Swazi Farm. Let me just look at some of the allegations that have been made against them, so that they'll be able to answer. Some of the questions will come from my colleagues here, but here, gentlemen, you are accused of undelivered drugs. You've been accused of paid for donated drugs, supply of trial drugs, which has been mentioned by Mr. Dlamini here, supply of expired and short-dated stock. You've been accused of receiving fraudulent duplicate payments and also a 20% price hike. That's just part of the accusations that have been made against you. But maybe, Sean, let me start with you. Just give you at least maybe another 10 minutes to you just to tell us more about what I've just mentioned, and thereafter I'll go to Dave. Over to you, Sean.
All right. Good evening, everybody, and good evening to your audience. Thank you for having us back on. We appreciate the opportunity to discuss this issue. You know, the health sector crisis in the health sector and the shortage of drugs, and as some of the gentlemen in the studio indicated, that it's not necessarily just a plain shortage of drugs, but there's obviously very specific drugs that are in short supply. And we can attest to that from a point of view of Swazi Farm, because we're still supplying government almost every day, and we supply in very, very short order. So, you know, we are very strict and diligent about that, because we know how critical it is for the nation. In addition, we have an ethical obligation, and we care. Right? I mean, Swazi Farm has been around as much as I haven't necessarily been personally involved with it for a long time. Swazi Farm's been around since the 1980s, and as a business, it takes that obligation of supplying very, very seriously. So, Mr. Momo, you know, we do appreciate the opportunity to respond, and you know, I'd like to. You mentioned some of the allegations that have been laid against Swazi Farm, and indeed Avo Farm as well. Just for clarity, we are sister companies. Avo Farm was supposed to be a division of Swazi Farm with a slightly different focus, but so I'll sort of discuss the implications of them jointly for now. You mentioned undelivered drugs, so there's an accusation in the Auditor General's report that 33.9 million Imalangeni's worth of drugs were not delivered, yet we were paid. So there's a few interesting parts of that. Number one is how does anybody get paid for anything by government, right? And unless you have literally every piece of paperwork, you never get a cent out of government. That's not how they work. And then, you know, the Times of Eswatini was kind enough to expose a little while ago a little shortcoming in the report's investigative capacity. In that, we get clear instructions as the tender award, when the tender is awarded, that the drugs are to be delivered to the unit, especially in the case of an ICU tender, the drugs are to be delivered to the unit or the hospital who placed the order. So when government ICU, Bawani Government Hospital's ICU orders something from us, we deliver it to the hospital. It doesn't go to CMS. And that instruction, the Auditor General's office and the Accountant General's office is copied in that instruction when the tenders are ordered. So it's baffling for us to understand how it's possible that that office doesn't know that these drugs are actually delivered somewhere else and not at CMS. But instead of just doing a bit of due diligence, they flat out accuse us of undelivered drugs, and we got paid for it, which is just simply you then made mention of a supply of trial drugs. This is unfortunately also somewhere where a little bit of due diligence and a bit of professionalism would have solved the problem, because if you look in the Funduzi report, they do in fact include a letter from Blueprint something, a WHO organization subsidiary, saying that remdesivir is under trial for COVID. So WHO was trialing the drug in the treatment of COVID. It wasn't a trial drug. And that's a distinctly different statement to make. It's not the same thing. It's not a trial drug. It's a registered drug. It's a fully patented, fully sellable drug. And yet it was labeled incorrectly as a trial drug. Then, I think related to that, and I think what a lot of people get confused about is the printing on the box where it states that remdesivir is not for sale in the US, Canada, and the United Nations, in the EU. Sorry, the European Union. So essentially, there's a business, there's one company in the US that owns the patent for the product and the recipe and the ingredients. And during COVID, they licensed this recipe out to other manufacturers in the world. One of them being Mylan Laboratories in India, who produced it at a much lower rate or a much lower cost and distributed it around the rest of the world, which thank goodness, because it saved millions and millions of lives during COVID. However, the patent holder reserves the right to retain their own market space, right? So they reserve the right to resell their product, their version of remdesivir in the US, Canada, and the EU. So on the boxes, under license, you're obligated to put that you're not allowed to sell it in those regions. So that if the drug is bought more cheaply from Africa and smuggled into Europe, then it's clearly labeled on the box that it's, it's a sort of breach of their contract. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's exactly how that's supposed to work. You spoke about short supply of expired or short dated drugs. Just for the record, Swazi Farm has never ever delivered an expired drug. We don't do that. When it comes to short dated drugs, so how this works is if CMS needs something from us and it's urgent, and we have a small quantity on the shelf in Matsapa available today, and we know, they know from their consumption, their history, and their records that this drug will be used quite quickly, and we have the drugs on our shelves are within the 24-month period that is required by government for a shelf life, we will write a letter and say, guys, we've got X, Y, and Z for you. It's a small quantity. The expiry date is within the next 1 year or 9 months, whatever the case may be. Are you okay with that? Will you be able to use it in that time? And we have a policy that if you don't use it, we'll take it back. So we never supply expired drugs. And if there is a short dated drug, we've got a signed letter from CMS to tell us that it's okay and we can deliver. Then on the subject of being paid fraudulently for duplicate payments. Okay, so I don't remember the exact wording in the report, but I think it's something like Swazi Farm received or Ava Farm received duplicate payments which constitutes fraud. And Mr. Dlamini was kind enough to include evidence in his own report where there's a memo that stipulates how much we should be paid, 68 million Malangeni, and the payslip, the payment voucher, which has a character limit. You can only pay 9,999,999 Malangeni in one payment voucher. So the second somebody needs to be paid more than 10 million, it's 2 payment vouchers. 68 million is obviously 7 payment vouchers. And as a result, we got paid 7 times for the 68 million Malangeni. So again, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's just how government works. But it's interesting that unfortunately the report was leaked to the public somewhere along the line to social media. And that's what happens, right? Is they take those words, it's therefore fraud, and they accuse us of fraud without actually reading anything past that. So I've been told that that my time is up. I'll just make one more comment on the price hike, the 20% price hike. That was unilateral across the entire health sector. It wasn't just us. Every single supplier got a 20% bump. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it was due to currency exchange, fluctuation in the dollar.
Indeed, thank you very much. Indeed, Sean, very clear and straightforward. Yeah, you are within your time. At least you only took just 1 minute. Well, maybe just for our viewers to understand what this was all about. Babe, Sean, uchazile nebenkosi lenhle ukuthi uyivile endzaba lekhulunywako la yema-drugs ukuthi iSwazi Farm ne-Ava Farm ngema-sister companies lokusho ukuthi bosisi nabhuti wathi-ke indzaba yekuthi bona bazange bamnikise emaphilisi enzani lapha ka-CMS uthi kwaba nencwadi kwavunyelwana kwekuthi kutawufanele ukuthi leyo ncwadi nebenkosi lenhle noma lawo ma-drugs athunyelwe etindzaweni etehlukehlukene nebenkosi lenhle ngathi athunyelwe etibhedlela hayi ka-CMS ngoba bona bathi lapha kule report bekufuna kuthunyelwe ka-CMS. Uphinde futhi uthi mbamba indzaba ye-trial drug leshitwe nguye umlangeni lapha wathi lama-drugs lawa ngathi ngisakubona lapha kuthitheni la kodwa ke nema-journalist lapha nebenkosi lenhle kafishane nje nakucela mfana khona ngichaze lapha uthitheni lapha nge-supply of trial drugs ngeSiswati ngoba lapha uthi the drugs were fully patented lapha sokukhuluma ngeRamdesivir ngikubhala lapha kungishile lokunye sikhona sonke
so cha lebekazama ukuchaza Morgan Mfuleni ukuthi no leli drug lapha bekuse kunale misconception no la chaza ukuthi kunalo not for sale in certain markets so chaza yona
before that trial drugs
uchaze ukuthi le trial drug lapha ku specified lokuthi WHO is trialing this usho ukuthi beba kule motion yokuthi they were trialing it in certain markets, not that it's currently under trial bese lisetshenziswa vele
asoyibeka
uthi le philisi bese likhona isebenza but liku trial for i-COVID.
Yes.
Akubexele nje yabo yaphilisi lekuthiwa iViagra alizange lakhelwa
leli lesebenzisa konyalo
khona la lokhu lesetshenziswa kwakuyi-side effect kwasekutrayalwa ukuthi uyodipha abantu bahluphekile ningasida but lona kwakhiwa kwalo lingene kumarket kuthiwe suitable for human consumption belingasilo lalo
kuthi iViagra endani yona
abantu bayathengisela lekusho ukuthi lakusho shona ukuthi leliphilisi lona akusho ukuthi belihambile emvini bekuthi bekucheckwa ukuthi lingamsida yini
for i-COVID
nembali awayishaya amagubu kodwa ngiselela kule Viagra ukuthi kodwa amagubu angakhuluma ngeViagra lapha mhlawumbe microphone lela tuwa abalathi bantu emakhaya ngibona mangilathi silanda ufuna usho wena sikhuluma ngayo sesichaze cha kulungile magubu kodwa nje sihamba zithole lendaba yeViagra ukuthi uyisuselaphi nje sikhuluma ngaRamdesivir anyway asiqhubeke nebenkosi lijala ngise besinale ejele nebenkosi ngiyahlupheka kakhulu ngani so khuluma lapha ngaRamdesivir lapha ukuthi bambamba indzaba yaloko indzaba patent million in India and stuff uyabona sengisiyahlupha asengithatha ngijikishele kuwe futhi emlangeni
okay le patent usho ukuthi le parent company labantu labakha leli drug bathengisela labanye bamvu bathi kepha lapho silakhe khona thina siyayiowna le market yethu so singakunika ulithengise in other markets but ngeke uthengisela ka EU nalapho thina sikhona khona kuthengisa thina kuphela ngalana usho ukuthi bayayipatenta le product bathi ngeke ukhona futhi kuyi reproducer wena thina siyakunika but you can't sell it kule market yethu
Okay, lenza bakhulunywa kakhulu eParliament engikhona ke le. Ngiyamangala nje ukuthi ngoba kwathiwa kubhaliwe lapha
Kuthi not for sale.
akasiyokuthengiswa kanti indzaba kulesingisi.
Indzaba bekungilesingisi mhlambe nale.
Yeah, no empeleni ngoba nami ngasima ngalunye isikhavele konakele.
Kepha ke ne commitment mhlambe kubo forensic audit because nase sikhuluma ngabo forensic audit mfulini kudzinga ukuthi kube nabo evidence.
Yeah.
So you can't make a claim and not back it up. Kepha sikubhadele sisife 4 million.
Yeah. Ama-drugs short dated uthi ke yona kuyakhulunywa nebengosi kuyavunyelwa sinabe semaphilisi kana 9 months babhale incwadi. Ukuthi cha sina iphilisi 9 months nanasheshe ngisebenzise lithatheni kuvunyelwana bese bawathatha ke ama-drugs nebengosi lenhle. Bathi ke akusilo iqiniso ukuthi bona bamixe ama-drugs lokho asekavele endanjiyana. Indaba ya paid fraudulently for duplicate drugs nakhona uchazile lapha nebengosi lenhle ukuthi uyibeke wathini.
Uyibeke wathi uhulumende at the time bekule system yokuthi akakhona ukubhadala over 10 million. So nangabe nje kutawumela kubhadale uhulumende 10.2 million mfulini takubhadala kabili takubhadala 9.99 million bese bangeta nalelenye ngetulu. Bona ke ngoma le mali being 68 million kwadzingeka ukuthi labo 9.9 million bangeteke kuze bakhe lo 68 million.
Ubakangwane base bathi kuphinze
kwabese kuthiwa kuphinzeke ipayment inye kanengi kanti cha vele beku add up to le amount lebekumele babhadalwe yona.
Yes, wase ke 20% nebenkosi lenhle itindzaba tenjena kwethi imali temadola ngethemba sengibeka kahle lapho. Kuthi wathi ama price abasa eba inflated by 20%. Angathi ngibeka kahle. Kuthi kwaba currency exchange.
And nakasho lapho apparently all suppliers in fact babhala tincwadi kunetincwadi letikhona letabhalwa ama suppliers lamaningi ayicela vele leyo price variation and babese bayifola across, so it wasn't one company that got it.
Okay, siyabonga kakhulu. Well, let's just continue now with the show. Yes, and now we will go to Mr. Dave. Yes, we've heard so much from Sean. Is articulated on a number of facts. But however, I think, Mr. Dlamini, at some point you have to come back, but it looks like our time is not agreeing with us here. We only have about 30 minutes maybe, so we have to be quite short, but we still have your 10 minutes just to tell us more about your perspective on this matter.
He covered most of the topics that had been brought up. And as Zakele quite rightfully said, it's a matter before court, so we can't go into too much in the way of details. I'd just like to elucidate a little bit more on the remdesivir story. So remdesivir initially was formulated to treat Ebola. And remdesivir is an antiretroviral. COVID-19 is was a retrovirus, and they found during the COVID crisis that certain patients were being helped by using remdesivir, and they did their own trials on it. When we say trials, not it as a trial drug, as a repurposed drug from treating Ebola to treating COVID. And emergency use license for the use of remdesivir in the treatment of COVID was granted by the United States Food and Drug Administration and the European Union. So the drug was licensed for use to treat COVID-19. The Funduzi report came up with a number of things with regarding remdesivir. One of them obviously was the trial, that it was a trial drug. We know that it's not a trial drug. They took on the side of the remdesivir box an address that was the physical address of the manufacturing plant. And on that, part of the address was a phase 3 of a certain area in India. And they utilized that phase 3 to show that it was a trial drug. But it would have taken a 2-minute search on the internet to show that that wasn't the case. And as far as referring to WHO and the letter that came from WHO and paragraph 4, etc., the letter came out 18 months after the Funduzi report. The Funduzi report had no reference to the letter that came out. As to the ARVs, you know, I mean, we talked about, you talked a little bit earlier, Mr. Makuba talked a little bit earlier about the ACC and the non-delivery of antiretrovirals to 640 million or whatever it was, and then they reduced it to 2 million. When that actually does happen, the 2 million was delivered, and we'll get to that point in some time in the future, I'm sure. But I'd like to point out to the nation is that the treatment program for HIV in the kingdom is one of the best in the world, if not the best. And the fact that during COVID, when manufacturing plants around the world were shut down in limited production, the kingdom never ran out of antiretrovirals. So to hear accusations about non-delivery, it's such nonsense. And I cannot even begin to tell you how it makes a person feel, the nonsense that is being spoken, that's being spread, and it does nothing to alleviate the health crisis in the kingdom. Nothing at all. It's just a narrative to put smoke in the air, to muddy the waters, and it does nothing to help what we need to do to get the kingdom back on the right track, that the patient at the end of the day, when they go into the hospital, they see the doctor, they go to the pharmacy, they get what they need. I'm happy to answer any questions that are asked of me. Technically, on the technical side, I'm a pharmacist. I joined Swazi Farm in 1986. I left them for a while, went back with them. So I've been around with Swazi. I was around with Swazi Farm for a very long time. And in all the years that Swazi Farm has been here, we've always done whatever we can to help the patient, to help the kingdom in the delivery of safe, effective, cost-effective medication.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dave. Yes, Dave has been very clear. Well, I'll ask the gentleman for just a minute to just tell us more about what Dave was saying, so that at least we do translate. But before that happens, I have some credentials about this gentleman. First, Swazi Farm is owned by His Excellency, Mr. Ashraf. That is he's one of the longest-serving consular generals in the country. He's the managing director of various companies in the country and abroad. The current owner of Swazi Farm took over in July 2023. Well, that's quite a surprise also, because we are talking about issues before 2023 year, and I believe they are blamed on him as well. We'll discuss that. Maybe if he comes over, I'll just find out whether he was a ghost before 2023. And then also there's Mr. Dave Melvin. He's a qualified pharmacist, MD of RGCO and former MD of Swazi Farm, was involved with Swazi Farm since the late 1980s. Oh, okay. Yeah, he just mentioned that. And then also there's Sean Morgan, business management consultant, worked all over Africa and Europe, 22 African countries, owned several of his own businesses. Yeah, that is Sean. The Sean that you see on the screen right now has been everywhere in Africa, and I wonder how many languages he speaks, African languages he speaks. But we'll deal with that story in another day. But in the meantime, let me hear from you, Nkosi Kutsibe kakhuluma ngani babe Dave.
Dave uraise issue yema-ARVs mvulini mhlambe la ithinzile na Mr. Makhubu ekucaleni kule case ye-ACC ukuthi uyayiphika categorically uthi cha vele bona ba-deliver and umenshina ukuthi in fact asikake laveni sike sishode ngema-ARVs. So kubavisa buhlungu ubona ukuthi bangeva ukuthi kuthiwa bagangile ngetindzaba tema-ARVs kepha lama drugs la shoda ke sivena sikake sive indzaba yema-ARVs and then uyamenshina ke ukuthi cha nalendzaba ye remdesivir lebesikhuluma ngayo uthi ifunduzi yathi nayenda le investigation yayo bacabanga ukuthi ohlambe ba mistake indzawo lese India lapho beliproducer bewa producer khona they mistook that for ukuthi iku phase trial lenza ukuthiwa I phase something le address bona bathatha ngekuthi bacabanga ukuthi bekusho ukuthi le drug it's under trial and seliku phase 3 kanti cha leli drug njengalo bekasichazela Mr. Makhubu ukuthi belile ibhola nyalo it was being tried out for i-COVID-19 ukuthi litawusebenza yini nguloko nje la kubeke Dave ngesingiso abesuthi ke cha utawuthatha imibuto langabe libandla linawo lelifuna kumbuta yona.
Yeah, usuku wakhuluma ngeEbola akakhuluma ngeViagra ke uthi Ebola manje ke kodwa bekathini ke Ebola
bekasho kona ukuthi initially vele le remdesivir beyiye Ebola ngalesikhathi se-COVID ke kwabese kubukwa ukuthi ngoma le tifo letibanga ticishe tifane kuthiwa asesibuke ukuthi ngakhona yini kusebenza for i-COVID-19
wasa sokhuluma nenzaba ukuthi HIV treatment la ngwane ngathi hambe embili emhlabeni wonke lokusho ukuthi ngibona abantu bathumela amaphilisi ale lewanyana kusho lokho
bacupha ikakhulu singathi noma 80% ngedulu kwa 80% wala ma pharmaceuticals avela qhamuke India kakhulu seke kakhulu vele eIndia.
Okay, ngiyabonga kakhulu Nkosi. Ngicabanga ukuthi lesikhathanya lo I might have to ask them to show me His Excellency Mr. Karim Ashraf, because there are some issues that are coming here. Actually, I saw just one that he owned this company in 2003, was it
2023?
2023, yeah. Yeah, I think he may. I'll ask Sean or Dave to bring in His Excellency. But before that, I think we should give an opportunity to Mr. Dlamini for just 5 minutes, Nkosi. There's so many issues that have been touched here about you and your report. Just for 5 minutes this time, was because now time seems to be completely against us.
But isikhathi esidliwe nje sibonga futhi Ndulini lithuba. Thanks for another opportunity. Ndulini, just to touch in one point, that's especially what Dave or Sean elevated on the part of departure, or even Makhubu tried to interpret it to say, but the track lale Ebola, right? But by that time, it was trial for COVID, right? I'm not applying my legal principle here as somebody in the legal field, but I'm just applying logic to say, if that's the case, did you buy the drug for Ebola or for COVID? I will put that question for you. To say, if then we're saying the drug, yes, it was for Ebola. The trial was for COVID. So did you buy the drug because it was for Ebola, or it was on the means of the trial of it being to treat COVID? That's a very key question. And that's where you expect journalists to go deeper into every statement. And they don't do it at the time. And they disappoint me. Actually, it is that they ignore certain questions in most instances. On the other part, trying to move forward, in terms of mention that there was an agreement between Tender Board to say the drugs must be delivered in Babane Hospital. Then what one journalist should think of, or one somebody can do, what is the role of the CMS? Why do we have CMS? The role of CMS is to make sure that if we have ordered a Panado
the Panado will be delivered, confirmed efficacy as per standard of procurement to say it is a Panado. But if now we're going to be sitting here and say, no, there's an agreement there, we could see a I'll use a Mangaya and I'll use a Baban hospital. Somehow, in a normal sense of procedure and in terms of operation, is there a deviation that none of them is seeing? Because that drug must be tested before it can be sent or distributed. It must be accounted, tested, and so on. That part is being breached, and nobody's seeing something wrong with it, so it's fine. There was that agreement that was done. Again, who has got the mandate to make that call? That's another part that is very important. One have to know about. Still with that, they mentioned to say there were communications, and I'm very happy with that point because that's what we also put in our report to say there were communications between these suppliers and these pharmaceutical officials to say, hey, my drug is expiring next month. Hit me late. The drug expired. That's what's named. The question is, if you know the drug, you don't need it as a pharmacist, somebody who's a head official. There are exemptions where we say that, you know what, guys, I'm having this drug expiring in 6 months, and the Mangaya need these drugs and these units, and guaranteed it's going to use these units in that 6 months. Then that can be sent, it can be accepted. We shouldn't be having these piles and piles of drugs sitting there expired. It's because somehow people. It's not only the issue of Remdesivir and expired drugs. There's a lot that I don't want to go into detail is, but only 2 issues are being dealt with here. The other issues are that there are people that are being there to erase expiry date, people changing labels, people also is not being discussed whatsoever. And you wonder to say, why? Again, the point of Mr. Ashraf coming to the party in 2023, I even asked Sean at some point in time to say, that's why in my report I don't have his name. I say Swazi Farm. But he came in to own everything. That's why that's how he put himself in that picture. To me, as somebody that came in 2023, should have said, you know what, I think they. But there's that sense of power that I've already analyzed from him to say, I can say whatever I say, I don't think I am, and nobody can tell me otherwise. And that's the wrong principle in society. We can't live like that.
Well, yes.
That's how we put in this picture.
Yes, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Dlamini. I'm tempted to open a dialogue right now, looking at Mr. Sean. Sometimes he nods, sometimes he keeps quiet, and also I hear some rumbling here where I am. I wonder whether I'm on air or yes, I am. And yeah, I believe that Bheki also is touched by some of the things that are being said by Mr. Dlamini here. I don't have much time right now, but I would like to open dialogue. I'll open the floor to everyone now, whoever wants to talk. I believe my technicians will figure out how to work this one out. Bheki, you have an issue, Sean has an issue, and Mr. Dlamini also has an issue. But then I believe that His Excellency, Mr. Ashraf, is not very far from there. There's been mention of him here because everybody keeps on referring to him, but there's no mention of him in all this that is happening around here. So I'm a bit worried that maybe at some point we should have him, but I believe that he won't be able to appear here. But I would have felt that I just want to find out why is he being pinpointed, yet there's no mention of him in all these documents that are around here. But in the meantime, let me open dialogue for everyone. Bheki, you start and talk to everyone else.
Yeah. I just want to pose a question to Mr.
Just continue. Yeah, it's just disturbing us. She's supposed to be writing a WhatsApp here, not give signs because we cannot tell what she's trying to say.
I was saying that I have a few questions for Mr. Dlamini, actually. And I was a bit worried about his responses now when he got the second chance. Mr. Dlamini, I think I want to ask you 3 questions. I could ask you more.
Just to make sure, gentlemen, we only have 5 minutes for
Okay.
this. Yeah.
So, Ngozi, you first of all, now Kuluma, you asked the question of Mr. Melvin. Would say, what is he saying? The drug was bought for Ebola. That's a bit of a worrying question to ask, given what Mr. Melvin said, because either move or we are deflecting, which is, by the way, what I think is going on with there's too much deflection. You said that your report was done very, very professionally. Your response to how Mr. Melvin talked about the drug that was originally for Ebola and became COVID suggests to me that you're not being honest, therefore. I'd like you to respond to that. But most of all, the most important question is, if you speak of ethics and professionalism and everything that Funduzi did, maybe we should start here. How did you get the tender? Was it by public bidding, which is what the law of Eswatini requires? You can't just go to umuntu lakangwane. Lone mandla ayivuke ekseni anike umuntu tender worth, even if it's 4 million. There must be an open tender. Can you tell us which dates this tender went to the public, which newspapers it was published in, which website, so that when you beat other competitors? I think that's the first thing. And perhaps one of the things that are very, very important, and this is what is disappointing about this country, of more educated people. What we are finding is people who question professionals in their field. Look at what the minister has done. Wake a committee of some people who are going to advise him. Two things arise from there. One of them is that there's the principal secretary advising him. A principal secretary advises a minister. Default. What's he advising him on more than what he does for a living? We are going to because PS who advise a minister, that's what the PS does. Nasaka committee go when on a day-to-day basis. And it's problematic in the way you are questioning Mr. Melvin. Mr. Melvin is a pharmacist, but now you are questioning his own judgment on drugs. You are not a pharmacist, so therefore you are not qualified to ask questions, second guessing. So I'm saying, one, how did you get the tender? Two, what is your competence to question professionals in their field about what labafunze university longakafunzi wena?
Okay, that's it. Let him answer.
Yeah.
Ntulini, Nesivesong, I think I will be able to answer 2 out of the 3 questions, if not 1. I think to start with, to say, how did I ask or how did I respond to say if the drug was produced by for Ebola? And I was making reference here, and I don't hope to Makubu get my question that I posed or that I packed there. I will just try to be a little bit slow in it. When Dave was explaining the issue around the Reserve, Makubu came in to clarify in Siswati to say, no, let drug lasel call. I hope I'm correct. Ngales kati lesi kuthiwa lalitshayelelwa for i-COVID, otherwise lona laselukhona phambili. My question was then, if that's the case, as Ntulini and Dave's position, did we procure the guy on the basis that that's a corner, or we procure the drug on the basis that treat the Ebola, or we procure the drug on the basis that we want to treat the COVID-19? That's a very critical question. That's where I parked it. I will move to the second point to say when the tender was advertised, which paper was it now? I think the office of the AGF responded to that question many times in terms of how that was done. I cannot deliberately, or I cannot be in a position to deliberate on that. I think it was responded in statement, it's been responded in the news to say, how did it unfold it? that question, it's not in my position to say I can go deeper and dive into that in that regard. Second part, to say I am not in a position to ask a farmer. I'm not a pharmacist, or I'm not qualified to be a pharmacist to ask that question. I think under the normal conditions here, or under this discussion, if we can dive to that, we're not going to finish the whole argument. Because here I'm being questioned by my report that involve what we perceive or what we find out as malpractices, maladministrations, shenanigans, and all this through the pharmaceutical supply system. Of course, with legal experts that have dived in as a director, who they report to me with the full information and details and my analysis, definitely I should have a question. I'm not say I'm qualified over him to ask or to say otherwise in that regard. But this is a normal logic question that each and every citizen can answer. To say, if nakutiwa a drug attempt, what must happen? What are the processes? And there are act regulations that stipulate it. So it doesn't mean that if you are not, we are not a pharmacist, we cannot ask a question, especially under the circumstances. So I think that question there, Makubu, umzala game, but if we from this session.
Siswati would like to say something, and then also Dave would want to ask a few questions to Mlangeni. But a little bit, gentlemen, we don't have much time right now. It's about 13 minutes remaining, so let's confine ourselves into just a minute, 1 minute question, 1 minute answer.
Okay, Mvuleni, I'll just add on Mr. Makubu's question because he didn't respond to Mlangeni. Mr. Makubu asked him, "How did you win this tender?" And he didn't respond. So can you please inform the public, Kuti, when was Funduzi formed and when did they win the tender?
Perfect.
Firstly, and then also angete lokuthi asitshele ukuthi Nyalo director yini uMlangeni Nyalo. He must confirm to the public if yena emabhukwini as the Ministry of Commerce is he registered as the executive director, because I can tell you he's not.
Okay, perfect. And then Mr. Nkambule has a question.
Yeah,
so 1 minute.
Yes, I have a question for you, Ngosi Mlangeni Lomuhle. Ngosi, ngicela kubuta kwekuthi
maybe do it in English first.
Yeah, from a layman point of view, when a forensic auditor is hired on the basis of prosecutorial probabilities. That means that the DPP can take your report, read it, and arrest someone. Because kufanele ukuthi yehluke kunale report ya AG, lele general, le AG, because we do have auditor generals and his team. So they hired you because they wanted to ensure ukuthi the evidence iba watertight kuze kuthi kiwa etinkantolo. Wena nayibuka le report yakho Ngosi ungamthatha umuntu umise enkantolo ngayo.
Yes, Labnabdene, you have 2 minutes to respond to the two questions.
Okay. Ngiyabonga Mvuleni. I think inzaba yokuqala kwaFunduzi ngiyiphendulile sibusiso ekuqaleni to say we were young in Swaziland. Yes, the company was registered as Sibusiso in October 2022, right? That's not dispute, it's a fact, it's given there. And I think the appointment happened in early 2023. Subject to correction, but I can provide you with that record because contract of employment, I mean, the contract of engagement is there. So I can share you that so I can have it on record. Second question is to say, yena uMlangeni, ngabe vele director in Fundis because emabhukwini akho lokhuluma ngawo angisiyo director. By government that say so. I've gotten documents in my possession that say so. I mean, if you really needed that statement, actually, it's something that surprises me even for the time when you published it. I think it was late last year when I first hear about this. After so long, then that's when I say, okay, this is a personal attack rather than dealing with the facts and the matters in hand. People would have been galvanized to say, no, let's deal with this one. Simply, this one is the problem. I've got documents, and recently I've renewed for another year for my company. The documents stamped and signed by the register. Now, and then if now we've got a document that says I am not a director, then you can share that document. Or you can go to the register and confirm otherwise. Actually, say look, send the narrative link. Ngale report yakho ungamisa
Yes, thank you very much indeed, Diana. We're back. Mr. Dlamini, yes, you're 2 minutes over right now, and I believe that there are some questions that will be coming from Sean on the other side. And may we apologize to some of our viewers, especially those who asked us to speak in Siswati. Basibhadala tikulufisi bantu abadzala bonke kude ngisho mina ongazange safunza laveni la ngwane sale nibamba nje niqosha nilenza umntwana ekhaya nimbuyise edudane nive bekuneze kuyashisa manje sekude isikhathi sesingisi sesiswati bangwane sidabuye sihumushe later wangwane ukuze into yokuconza kahle hle. Sean, I believe you have something for Mr. Dlamini.
Sorry, I didn't mean to give that impression. I had a few responses and sort of maybe some comments. His Excellency just asked me to pass on his regards. He's unfortunately got himself tied up with something else, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions on his behalf if it's appropriate. But some of the comments that I think I just want to cover on is you know, somebody asked the question about asking questions, right? Basically, who is Mr. Dlamini to question Dave on his pharmaceutical knowledge, etc., etc. I think there's something there, in particular from our perspective and what we've gone through and what Swazi Farm has experienced, because quite simply, Mr. Dlamini sort of highlighted his own ignorance in the same sentence, in that it's very easy to just ask the question, like, why is CMS there and why is ICU different? Because ICU and CMS have to be treated differently, because ICU patients are critical care patients. They need drugs now. There's no question about, oh wait, let's order it from CMS, we'll wait for it to get delivered, etc. So that's why they're different. And it only are you delivering direct to ICU, and obviously government has developed that strategy and that mechanism and that function, and that's how they've instructed us to do it for that exact reason. So one of the massive shortcomings I think in the report is that nobody bothered to come and ask us, why are you guys doing it like this? Did you deliver? If you did, where did you deliver? And can you show us the paperwork? It's very simple. I mean, it's really not difficult, and yet we've so I think that's one element. Then Mr. Malvin asked me just to update everybody and respond to Zakile's question about the remdesivir. Remdesivir was approved for use in COVID in December 2020, and the Kingdom only got and bought and ordered remdesivir in 2021. So it was already being used for treatment everywhere else in the world. And once it was established as giving very positive results, I think that the powers that be and the Ministry of Health actually order for the Kingdom. So he just asked me to mention that because unfortunately he's struggling with his audio connection. So I think that's all for me for now. But yeah, I mean, a lot of this could have just been avoided by asking simple questions and being professional.
And yes, now I believe that you said you are going to be answering questions for His Excellency now. He acquired the company in 2022 or 2023? 2023. And most of the issues that we're talking about happened before. Now, why is he always touted and always blamed for all that is happening around?
I think he's a popular character. I don't personally know why he gets attacked so aggressively. You know, recently these arrest warrants for the short supplied antiretrovirals, and we're taking up litigation on this for the record as well. There were 13 people named in the arrest warrant applications. His Excellency Mr. Ashraf is number 13. And the only reason in the warrant application is because he co-signed on the bank account as early as 2017, and that seemed suspicious. So earlier than his acquisition of Swazi Farm in 2023, he was a minor shareholder. But as a minor shareholder and a reasonably wise businessman, he wanted at least a signature on the bank account so that he had some level of control in the business. And that's the only reason that his name is on the arrest warrant. However, when you look in the media, he's somehow the kingpin. There's 13 other people. He's number 13. But the headlines were a prominent businessman and two government officials. And he's the only businessman in the list. So it's funny how seemingly he's always the target. It does make you question why.
Very much, Sean. It's about 3 minutes before the hour right now, and I believe that Mr. Dlamini has something to say, and everybody else has something to say. So maybe we start with Mr. Dlamini. Just 30 seconds, Mr. Dlamini, just before we close, just to respond to what Sean has just said.
Thanks, Sean. I didn't say ICU. I say MRU. That's point one in correction there. Just get it correctly. And then number two is to say that it's good when you listen to somebody and able to propose. I mean, you've just mentioned that he co-signed back statement in 2017, but he acquired the company in 2023. And then what was the signing act by in 2023? And again, if you recall me very well, I did say that in our report, there's nothing like Mr. Ashraf. There's nothing like shown. We say this company. What Swazi Farm did, because of the boldness and whoever they think they are as untouchable, they went to the media and say, no, Dlamini cannot say this, Fundisi cannot say this, AG cannot say this, who else cannot say this? There are 16 companies in our report. None of the other companies we've seen them go with media. None of the other companies have approached us otherwise. The report is there. They are waiting for that day when they are being called to answer. But I think the approach you guys take with His Excellency, that's what you guys draw the media into you. You open the gates for the media for yourself, to say the least, in my understanding of the whole thing. I will pack there today.
It's basic sort of phrasing in that. But what I was talking about wasn't the MRU comment. It was the fact that there was no discerning difference between where the drugs were delivered, and that's what you mentioned. And the two places drugs are delivered are CMS and ICU. So that you commented on the CMS being the central point, whereas it's just simply not true. ICU is treated differently, which is where the other drugs are delivered. And then, sorry, just a small correction. Dave corrected me on the signing of the bank statement on the bank account. My apologies. It was actually Farm that that he co-signed for because he was a minor shareholder there. And that's why his name was on the arrest warrant. It's just a small clarification. Apologies, it wasn't Swazi Farm.
And I'll start with you, Mr. Dlamini. What's your perception of the whole interview here? Let's have your analysis.
Sadly, Mvuleni, Umlangeni has once again chosen to deflate and not to really engage on certain questions. I think, honestly, Umnagefu. But the one thing that is worrying me, Mvuleni, ukuthi iyaqhubeka i-drug shortage. Amaswati ayaqhubeka meets etibhedlela. Mr. Makubu ukhulume lapha ngokuthi we have a problem la kule live lekuthi singasalaleli ema-experts. Now, when you listen to experts explain why certain medication needs to be imigiso straight ICU instead of a CMS, basically buta basic questions as if certain things are just basic and not done by professionals for a certain reason. So go risky ledlela lesenda ngayo team for laveni, but siyawavela eMaswati. And lokubhlungu kakhulu once again is if Mvunankulu utathi kithi uyati ukuthi lena report is not helpful. If government is going to sit on a report, if the taxpayers are going to have to pay an extra 4 million on top of lo mthelo laba uthelako for amaphilisi bachubeke bangapholi for it's a very painful thing to see. So Mvuleni siyathemba ukuthi kukhona mhlambe uhulumende latawugcina decide kwenda ngale situation because as is le reporter is seat.
Yeah, when you spoke earlier, you spoke about a third report, or rather a committee where a Funduzi lawyer is also involved. Yeah, talk about that just briefly, 30 seconds.
Well, I think Mr. Makubu, I'd like for Mr. Makubu to give insight as a person that has law expertise on especially because from where I'm seated, it just looks like a conflict of interest. I mean, Funduzi has two very important reports. Yinye lapha faka disclaimer kono wathi nine bekunene ngongele nikushokolana ngicela ningangibophi. Ngiyakusho as a matter of fact, but ngifuna ningangibophi wafaka disclaimer. But then continue to make certain allegations. So mina lengiva ngathi kuyinkinga Mvuleni ngiva ngathi these two reports are very central and leli committee lelibekwe nguminister ideally kutawumele lwasebenzise lama report for my decisions nalo utawuba njani ke impartial ummeli wefunduzi nangabe professionally umsebenzi wakhe defender labekunene befunduzi.
Dlamini, yes, your lawyer is creating a conflict of interest. 1 minute, just answer that one.
Ndolini ngicabanga ukuthi litiko nahulumende before they arrived in the decision to appoint ummeli in that position, they considered all the aspects. It was known to the public, it was known to the government to say he is our lawyer, and that has been thoroughly considered. I think government have got experts, have got legal team that have scrutinized it, and I'm sure some of the guys before you have said that we have to respect experts. So clearly government went through its experts to scrutinize that. It wasn't our mandate or our movement whatsoever suggestion in that regard. We're also seen that he's been appointed, we congratulated him, and all we need is for the country to function properly, people to have medicine, what they pay for, everybody to be eligible to for the law like they pay. So that part is entirely on government and the Ministry of Health. And I'm sure.
Between you and Sbusiso, what's the issue? Can we come in and solve it? What's your issue between the two of you gentlemen?
City issue that I gave.
Oh, yeah. We have an issue with time here. Yeah, I'm funny corner.
Thank you so much, Nema viewers. Ukuthi nisilalele. Asisho ukuthi kudi problem. Even asisho ukuthi kudi challenge. There is a challenge that needs to be addressed as a matter of urgency. Ayiqali lapha le issue yematrazi. Ngicela kathi kusena PS sikelela kwendi report yakhe kusena Mvunankulu babe Dlamini Barnabas. So izifika nanyalo kuyabonakala ukuthi kanzi issue ye health issue lesenhlitiweni abantu labadzala kufanele ukuthi sinakekele siyende kahle kube ne supply le kahle njalo kunje sifuna kwakha sibedlela la khona kutoba especially hospital lekufanele ukuthi sakhiwe even lekutaba i-National Referral Hospital uyabona lokuthi lenza bayaka health imicoka kangakanani etinhlitweni tebantu labadzala even so sekufanele si treat vele ngaleyo ndlela leyo let's it but mina ekugcineni ngathi kuyadzingeka nokuthi kucalwe phansi nangabe kunale challenge lenje ake sesicale phansi ukuthi aba-validated umlangene nanga kulethwe lenye ithenda ngiyathi lokuthi imali nangabe tikhona kulethwe nje lenye ithenda letawureviewa onke reports areviewe le yakhe i-report ifunduze kureviewe ne-report ya Auditor General bantu nje labataba independent highly skilled, highly qualified and highly experienced babuye bende lo msebenzi sibone ke nginasitawubona ukuthi vele ngazuthi kunenkinga ngoba sebake bayithatha le report labanye bayisa kuma consultants latsite la highly skilled balethe report yakhuluma lokutsite lengeke ngikusho emoyeni so nanyalo ke lokuhle ukuthi ngeke ngayikhuluma na PAC chairman wavuma naye wasivele kuyadzingeka ukuthi kwenteke lo ukuthi vele kuqalelwe phansi yena ngiyethemba ukuthi kungayisolva yonke le nkinga lena lekhona because now it looks like ngathi le report yafunduza i-tainted inema statements idele ukuthi kani i-forensic report ivele iconze ngco awube ufuna kuyidefend ayidefendeke ivele nje iconze ngco ithatha umuntu imfake ejele manje lana uyabona ukuthi bahle balethe evidence laba lebaphikisa.
Thank you very much indeed. Siyabonga kakhulu Msuthu Bheki parting shot.
Yeah, ngivebhlungu nje ukuthi umlangeni lapha so threatenisha kusuka athi utawuvala i-participation yakhe kule mbuto lengimbuto yona. But Dlamini wakunene so titeke tonke tinzaba. Utiteke tonke kude na in fact kude lokhulumelana nje lokwenza yena. But ngimbuto a simple question, why wina njani le tender? All he had to say was, I won it through tender number bani published on this and I bid for it. That's all he had to do. But he's now deflecting. He said everything else except, and the reason why he would say that is because if it turns out that this forensic report was not acquired through tender, it's a useless document you throw in the dustbin. It has no force of effect. It has no value, even if it was done professionally, and it wasn't. Because here's the thing. A report of a forensic nature, just like book of account, awufakaze, awutolike, awendini, it speaks for itself. It goes on, it takes a life of its own. The fact that he spent the last 2 hours here trying to explain the Funduzi report is because the Funduzi report cannot speak for itself. But that's fine. But how did it come about? Which tender board said and gave him under tender number? He can't answer that. He doesn't want to answer that. Is it because there's no answer?
Yeah, let's give him a minute to answer that one. Just before we close, we don't have time right now of actually overrun the show. I mean,
Ndulini. Makhubo ngiyamhlonipha kakhulu. Okay, let's be honest. I mean, the tender that you are referring has been published how many times in media? That he doesn't know the tender number. As has been serious, Westby, to say I've spent 2 hours trying to explain the report. The question is, who am I explaining the report to? Right? And what am I explaining? Because the report has got evidence. In each and every statement that is evident, attached evidence. I will pardon. Thanks very much.
This then takes us to the end of the show itself. I believe that we have consumed everything that we wanted to say. The gentleman on the other side, that is Sean on the other side. But then there's just one thing that remains, man. Because everywhere it's Ashraf. Ashraf, this Ashraf. It's pronounced differently. But there's no mention of him here. So we are here to analyze the story. I mean, gentlemen, let's not run away from that. How is His Excellency involved in this? Let's start from you.
I think his involvement must be him taking over Swazi Farm in 2023. But Minelogu, very important involvement ya Ashraf Mvuleni is Kune visit. Mr. Makubu keeps on bringing a question. You would say, how did Funduzi win this tender? And that's a very, very important question because something happens there between October and December. Funduzi wins this tender in December, but the company is formed in October. In that period, Auditor General Upaleli Tender Board, experienced. There's no other tender in the world they've ever done except this one. So why did the AG specifically motivate for this certain company to be hired? The AG also visits Ashraf's house at night in July after Ashraf takes over Swazi Farm. So there's that correlation that we should look at, maybe on another day.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's a difficult question, Dulene. I also raised that question in my article that I don't understand why His Excellency is featured in the whole thing. But maybe, but I think it would say in mainstream media, we never mentioned His Excellency's name.
Okay.
It's only social media. I wouldn't want to say they blew this thing out of proportion, but it was only social media. Lena yayivele imention yena ukuthi is His Excellency. So webe ma drugs ba vele nje basebenza labo dead. Thina we were careful. We would see we don't mention the name of any person until someone is charged. That's irule yethu. So we never mention noma singeva thina ukuthi uboshiwe namuhla lapha enkantolo ungakayi ulapha emaphoyiseni ungakayi enkantolo ligama lakho asilinami last believer khona ukuthi uboshwe embamba lesikhathi sikubona lapha enkantolo so na ngoba kungenteka sithi uboshiwe namhla bakukhulula ukukhansa sokuhamba edolobheni ekuseni.
Okay, thank you very much, Peggy.
Yeah, ngichaze Nduleni ukuthi mina kulaba lakhuluma ngabo shoni lo munye lo even though Ashraf abe number 13 accused ngasebenza yena he's Lagangwane has been here for a long time. Yatiwa Ashraf is a name kutumvlo by few banda bangamata Ashraf. So Ashraf is a news word. Kona labaga times bebabhala ngami khona. And ngathi ne but le story simco what's lo benkhuluma nayo but you sell newspapers. Personality said newspapers, unfortunately Ashraf. But Ashraf is also a big player. Kona lo mbuto le bangaphendula. Ashraf is a big player in the pharmaceutical industry. He's Upetsebo Melvin, who is a pharmacist of many years standing. They are big players. And this is a pharmaceutical industry. If you go back to the time chief pharmacist is saying, it's a highly contested place. Pharmaceutical. That's why in the Mlangen la panansimine angeka question the pharmacist. It's because because wonke muntu ufuna kwakhe ukuthi liphilise njani. Yabo? That is why lokho sikhuluma nyalo chief pharmacist wahulumende usekhaya wasuspend. Gocha kuneli committee advisor minister ngemaphilisi. Gocha lo waqashelwa kona wa trainer une masters lo makelo in pharmacy. But uhlele ekhaya kulandwa bameli babofunduzi bato advisor minister ngenaza akukutshela ukuthi kuyaganga uyaganga minister uyabo asikusho nje kucwale umlomo ukuthi uyaganga minister. Ashraf unfortunately maybe nyalo sekuyamgcina he's always been there. He's a public figure kuma functions ukhona he's and another thing now lalela nga Ashraf umuntu lo emaswati ngazuthi particularly the powerful ones bayaya kuye nabahluphekile uyibani wake wathi lo munye kimi ubhanga lamadrosa yabo amadrosa la tala abantwana bangafuni ukuthi kwatiwe ekhaya ngoba kuSiswati. Ashraf ke uyakushayilokha lokukondla labantwana lokho ebantwini labaningi bese babuya bamkhuluma kabi.
What do you mean? Explain.
What I'm explaining is, from what I've come to over the years, I've come to understand who he is. People go to him to say, "Ngicela ungiboleke 1,000 rand. Ngoba ngifuna ukubhadala school fees somntwana ami kuvulwa isikole." But lo mntwana lona akadalwa la ekhaya. Udalwe le ngaphandle. So akufanele atiwe la ekhaya.
Okay.
Ashraf ke uyababambisa abantu labanento ukuthi ngingaletho. But in order ukuthi ufihla umuntu. Bo Ashraf ke ngile type lekufanele umkhulume kabi so that kungatoka tikwa lokuthi ungumngane wakho. Khona tohlale kufihlekele licala lelo.
Okay.
And therefore he became a sitting duck for the deflection yale corruption leyendekako in the Nansana. Kuthiwa imali idliwa ngAshraf.
Okay.
Ansi sekulula lokumkhuluma kabi. Okay. Yayibona into leyo. In the meantime, kunemeli wafunduzi uhlele committee na minister badle ma sitting allowance. Na PS is now being paid twice for the same job. Kuthiwa double dip lo. Asikubuti lo. Bathi nababona ukuthi kuyathulela bangene enkantolo bathi asibophe Ashraf. Nakathi judge uboshelwane bathi kushoda 600 million. Nakathi nabakhuluma ambuti ama questions actually akusiye sexa wasibadala lo 600 million kuna 2 million. Uthi Dave kwayena lo 2 million bamsort. It's all, imagine kube baboshwa. Imagine ansinibekuthatha nakuboshwa Ashraf kusuke imedia vele beyitawuthi utoshutha. No journal nawe botawuthi uma abafana bawushutha Ashraf aboshwa. And then sonke sibuka Ashraf babe badla abantu abatsala.
That's thank you very much. Yeah, that's what. Viewers, as you realize, this was a program just to analyze the situation on the drug crisis. Well, Labna, thank you very much for joining us from Johannesburg. As always, he's always never given us any problem. Every single time we invite him, he says, yes, I will respond. At least we do appreciate that. Well, there may have been a statement which may not have assisted you in any way, but however, that's just part of journalism. That's what we do. And looking at your resume here, I realized that you're a very professional person, and definitely you do know what we call syllogism, where we do some argumentation. It all comes to where we are at this moment. Sean, thank you very much. Dave, I believe you are still there. Thank you very much. And also, please pass our best regards to His Excellency, because we thought maybe he was going to also appear here, but we do believe that he was called out because I had some other questions for him, because there's been so many allegations leveled against him. And gentlemen, thank you very much also for having been with us here. Pegima Kubu, we've been with him for quite a while. We should have a program. Actually, we should host a show here to tell them how is it inside there. Yeah, because he actually please, yes. In the dock. He was giving me a lot of trouble, because when he made serious problems, I had to be called in. He's my young man. We had to pump straight. No, because actually there was a time but no, so so sibonga kakhulu benkosi lenhle kakhulu nathi nani kuba nathi kulapha hlelo la people and places lapha e-studio ke benkosi lenhle sibambisene kubandla lapha longena asiproducer hlelo lamhlala engikhanyisele mabuza kanti ngithemba ukuthi mfana ke Julisa mamba ubese kuba khona le benkosi lenhle lapha tohlanganisa inobhoda yakhe la engiyelo ibambile benkosi lenhle kanjalo futhi nasiyabonga Dlamini ku floor benkosi lenhle esinayi khona lapha benkosi lenhle kanjalo ukhona lapha Pendla wakamamba bataze basta bakamama banenge kakhulu amajala ngoba phela ngiyathi tiya reporter lethi adlali kanjalo but vele iqiniso bantu bami bantu bami kunakhanya ngitshela wena futhi ngiyathi ngolokhuluma kakhulu kunakhanya maziya ku sound nanele imdzebele ku TX najulisa mamba umntwanami ulapha kuZoom kunasiyabonga Dlamini ngumzala wami lo ngumzala bakaDlamini nama cameras kunaphendla bamtalwa ngimi ulapha kuma captions sekunakhanyisa nabuza uya producer. Any comment?
No.
Okay, right.
Unobewa kamamba kusebenza ka channel.
Okay.
Sile interview process bully.
No kusethi makuvuma bheke kula. Sofla semoyeni awuvile kusemoyeni la. Bantu bathawusini. Sangiyavalisa kenyana.
Bantu ngasibayithanda for the conversation.
Lesiteka noma kanjani. Cha sesiyavalisa nyalo. Cha bengosilenhle uma ngabe kusho ukuthi ujabulile sijabule nawe lapha ka Channel Yemaswati. Mabe njalo uphatheke kabi siyaxolisa kakhulu. Ngakho ke sesivele siyavalisa. Lihlelo la People and Places likhona ku social media likhona everywhere. Kanjalo futhi uphindze ulithole nebengosilenhle nasiliphinza lapha ngawo umgcibelo. Noma njani ndobukisisa kabanti nibite abantwana bathu nohumshela nabe kusho ukuthi khona singisilo ngapha sasiva kahle kakhulu. Nebendlovu yemhlaba lo mangceveza kwesho waphuza. Lo ngcevethe umhlaba wehlane kwevela kubele mwesimunye ngesheya. Likabazi lapho uzaligidzela phaka lo bamba kwesukuthi unamphica kamthethwa wayawubikela lusinto ufaka ukuthi ngena bamkhanza khuma umhlabathi kanti besuke baqanqaba la bayaludidzinga labakhanze khona nduna mwifi uthi lijobo libheke etulu vuligedelo yokubehlana wasikeza sililo wasigidza indlovu ngisona kuyindlovukazi go indlovukazi mhlekazi nebamswati lo mnyama balithuli lokuma mayitulu nzabe intengwenya wasinaka buka emva wabona sivela wesemkhulu edungtela wangena esibani emswati wabuke empumana abasawuthilta umthimba wabuke entshonalanga abazulu gogo vele lifile kepha umuntu akandaba agubhisela abili kathathu wayisusa ingune bekungesengwane ngonkana ozumajezi bayethe wena phakathi nisale kahle.